Monday Night Football picks and a Week 4 recap of the NFL. Hi, it is the Schatz and Tanier NFL podcast from FTN Fantasy. I am Aaron Schatz of FTN Fantasy. He is Mike Tanier. He can read his Substack at miketanier.substack.com. Among the subjects we're going to get to today, besides a Monday Night Football preview, is the unstoppable Vikings, the unstoppable Jayden Daniels, and what the hell happened to the Buffalo Bills last night. But first, I want to tell you that our podcast is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, because the NFL season is back and there's no better way to celebrate than with Underdog Fantasy. It is the easiest place to play fantasy sports and the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. And Underdog is now offering a new customer special for FTN that is $1,000 on your first-time deposit, up to $1,000 on your first-time deposit. The Underdog app is easy to use, and weekly contests such as the onside kick and the double doink are back. Head over to Underdog for a deposit match up to $1,000 if you use the code FTN. That's up to $1,000 extra at Underdog Fantasy. So the Baltimore Ravens, DVOA favorites, even after starting 1-2, they were the second best 1-2 team in DVOA history, and they are now the second best 2-2 team in DVOA history, trailing only the 2001 Philadelphia Eagles.
Barely remember that team. That's very early in the McNabb era. I believe they go into the playoffs.
They go to the conference championship game. They lost the conference championship game to the Rams.
Okay. So, yes, this was like during the rise of and it's interesting because like those Eagles were a team that had like no wide receivers, and the Ravens are a team that have like no wide receivers, but excellent quarterback, great running game, solid defense, good offensive line that overcame
John Harbaugh,
yes. Oh my gosh. And what the heck happened last night? I mean, you're like, DVOA knew this was coming.
I love the Bills too. So, I mean, DVOA loved the Bills too. I think there is a little bit of an element of we hadn't put in the opponent adjustments yet. And so I think part of the problem with the Bills is we didn't know how good the teams that they had played were.
Yes.
Right? Because Arizona, I can't tell how good they are. Yeah. And Miami, they played against Tua for at least the first half of that game, but the second half of that game, they were just clobbering on Skylar Thompson.
Right.
So Buffalo may have been a little overrated, and the Ravens are a really good team and at home, but I didn't expect. I mean, I was still talking about when he threw that ridiculous 52-yard pass to Khalil Shakir where he was falling out of bounds. I was like, they scored a touchdown a couple plays later, and I was like, a lot of ball game left.
Yep.
You never know in the modern NFL, all kinds of comebacks.
Right.
And then they did that wacky trick play where Allen didn't realize that Van Noy was right behind him, and there was a fumble, and then the Ravens came back, and that was that.
Right. I was in the same boat. It's like, here comes game on. The Ravens were starting to self-inflict penalties a little bit. Around that big play, you were seeing some plays where the Bills were moving the ball better and getting a little more comfortable. It's like, okay, the mismatch is over. That was kind of like the Bills were unprepared early, or however you want to say it. It looked like such a physical mismatch.
Yeah, they were really missing the linebackers, Milano and Bernard being injured. The Bills were really missing them. And then they lost Taylor Rapp halfway through, and it was like, ugh.
Yeah, but the Ravens were without half their starting line and had guys in weird positions on their line and didn't have their center.
Rosengarten, it turns out, who you keep referring to as Sackengarten, is quite a run blocker.
I can see that. He was definitely plowing guys down in there. I think Falele is also pretty great when going straight ahead. He's kind of like a cement mixer coming at you. Part of that I just looked at, and the Ravens absolutely steamrolled them. There's just a little bit of that Monday night come off this just absolutely shellacking of the Jaguars, coming into a road game the next night out of gas. I saw a little bit of that with the Bills, where it's like this team is more physical than this. They weren't at 100%, I think, physically in that game.
There's definitely an element of – I tweeted about it during the game.
Mm-hmm.
We all want to completely overstate the importance of single games.
Yes.
Right? This was a single game. Yeah. The one where the Ravens lost to the Raiders was also a single game.
Yes.
This doesn't mean that the Ravens are now unstoppable. This doesn't mean that the Bills now can't stop anybody. The matchups were bad for the Bills here, but they aren't necessarily going to be this bad if these teams meet again in the playoffs.
Right.
But I think we should lower our opinion of the Bills a little bit based on this game and raise our opinion of the Ravens a little bit.
And that makes perfect sense. And as I wrote, the Bills, they look like this. They have this division locked up. So
yeah, because the Jets are pretty meh, and the Dolphins are one of the worst teams in the league right now because of their quarterback situation, and their defense isn't good, and the Patriots are terrible.
Right.
So yeah,
it's like for the Bills, it's like, okay, learn from this, be ready for whatever rematch comes. The Ravens are a little bit different because I think a lot of us were discounting them because, and again, DVOA sees these things that we don't necessarily see. Like, remember how close that Chiefs opener was?
They totally outplayed the Raiders in week 2.
They totally outplayed the Raiders in week 2. Most people didn't even see that game. I watched it, and it's like, okay, fluky fourth quarter. Totally outplayed the Cowboys. All this hype was around the Steelers, and it's like, the Steelers are the Steelers are the Steelers. The Ravens look like they are going to push their way back into the top of that division.
Yeah, the Ravens are now the Super Bowl favorites in the playoff odds.
Oh my gosh!
Despite being 2-2, the Chiefs are right behind them. The Chiefs are right behind them.
But by the way, Rashee Rice injury is not factored into those odds.
No, but it's bad.
That's bad.
Yeah, the Rashee Rice injury is bad because, switch to another game here, but I felt like after the Rashee Rice injury, it was like, oh, now we're last year's Chiefs.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Because there's one really good receiver, which is Worthy.
Right.
And I don't even think Worthy is as good as Rice because he's faster, but he's not as good a route runner. So all of a sudden now the offense is going to go through Kelsey. Right. We're going to drop balls and we're going to look meh. And Kelsey's going to be the one guy and we're going to escape with a win because the defense is good. It looked a lot more like last year's Chiefs.
Right.
After Rashee Rice went out.
Right. And but even a weaker version of last year's Chiefs because the last year's Chiefs had Rice, who was on the rise. So, that's a worry for the Chiefs moving forward, and that's a worry the Bills don't have.
A couple of questions about the Commanders. We're going to get to the Commanders in a little bit. I will note Sean McDermott punted on a 4th and 1 and a 4th and 2 early in this game.
Yes.
And there were a lot of complaints from Bills fans online about him being really conservative. Now, the interesting thing is McDermott is not really conservative overall. Okay. He was 18th last year in aggressiveness index. He was higher than that in most of his previous years. So he's not like Dan Campbell or anything, but he tends to be more aggressive. The response from the Bills fans was that apparently he tends to be very conservative against good teams.
Interesting.
And I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but I'm going to look at it later today, whether he's more aggressive when he plays bad teams than when he plays good teams.
Yeah. I remember the 4th and 2 and being like, well, 4th and 2, it's a little trickier than 4th and 1. Yeah. But I don't remember the 4th and 1.
I think 4th and 1 was the 4th and 2 was an earlier drive. The 4th and 1 was a little later, but
okay.
I don't remember what yard line it was on.
Right. That makes a big difference, obviously.
Don't forget, by the way, if you're watching us live, we do this as a live stream Mondays and Thursdays at 11 a.m. with an asterisk. There will be no show this coming Thursday due to the Jewish holidays. I'm giving Mike the day off.
You don't want me hosting. Underdog does not want me trying to do the ad read. It will be a complete disaster.
Let's talk about the Vikings. Holy mackerel. They gave up a lot of points in the second half, in part because they couldn't run the ball, so they couldn't really run out the clock. They only had 3.5 yards per carry, but that is the number 1 defense in the league by DVOA. Darnold looks good. Jefferson, of course, is great. Addison is back. They'll get Hawkinson back in a few weeks. The Vikings look absolutely positively for real here.
Right, and it's hard to come up with, well, you see, what's really happening is this. What's really happening is they've beaten 3 straight playoff caliber opponents at home, on the road, in different circumstances, everybody with their starting quarterback, nobody facing an injury rush. Everything you say about it is true, and as they get guys back, it looks like they have the potential to be even better.
By the way, Hitchhiker's Pie points out the Bills had the 4th and 1 in second quarter, down 11, on the 39-yard line. I'm assuming that you mean their own 39-yard line.
Their own 39-yard line, yeah. And I looked at that judgment call because of the potential for disaster if you fail on that is really high.
Yeah, but it is only 1. You're down 11.
Yeah.
but it's early in the game. I see both sides of the ball, but I see both sides of the story. But what's weird is McDermott went for a 4th and 3 on like the first drive, and then on 4th and 2 he wouldn't go, which is weird. It doesn't show consistency.
Right, and that's odd.
So yeah, the Vikings are essentially number one. We'll get to the preview of DVOA in a second. They're essentially number one because they're number one out of teams that have played 4 games.
Okay.
Right. And they just look really good. Flores looks like the favorite right now. I mean, not like there really are favorites early in the season like this, but if we voted today, he would be assistant coach of the year.
By a landslide.
And I think O'Connell would be coach of the year.
Yeah, Clint Kubiak had his moment. It's Brian Flores all the way. And the defense is strong. Offensive line looks good. Everything is balanced. Everything works in harmony. The comeback wasn't as much of a comeback as it looked like because there was like a play on the final drive.
Right. It was actually it wasn't really a 1-score game. It was really a 2-score game.
It was a 2-score game, and there was a little bit of a let-up. There were some turnovers in the second half by the Vikings. But again, you're facing a very strong Packers team. You're not expected to like steamroll an opponent like that.
All right. Let's talk about the Commanders. Camden Caps asks, what are your thoughts on the Cliff Kingsbury rebirth?
Camden Caps, are you Cliff Kingsbury? Is this your burner account? Cliff Kingsbury has been calling some phenomenal games early on. One thing I saw in the first half of that game, it reminded me a little of early Chip Kelly. They were messing around with tempo. They were doing a lot with both zone read concepts from a variety of formations and wrinkles mixed in with RPO concepts off of that, and it was very exciting. I'm not going to rush to say Cliff Kingsbury has turned things around because I've seen him be very creative.
We've also seen him decline in the second half over and over and over again. So there's almost a little bit of a let's wait and see what happens in the second half.
Right. It's a lot because he's got such a kitchen sink offense. Sometimes, like at the beginning, it's like I don't know any tendencies from these formations. I saw a lot of formations in yesterday's game. And then later on, you realize, well, he always does this from this, always does that from that. Receivers are always in the same place. You have to watch out for that as the season unfolds.
I did see an explanation about why the receivers are always in the same place.
Okay.
It's because he likes to use tempo.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because they go no huddle a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier for the receivers to just stay on the same side.
Right, which is what Peyton Manning did. His receivers stayed on the same side, et cetera, et cetera. But when you get figured out in other places, that stopped becoming, a good explanation for what you're doing. Right now, though, you can't argue with it. Right now, everything is in sync out there.
The discrepancy between EPA stats and DVOA on the Commanders' offense is interesting. Not that DVOA says the Commanders' offense is not good.
Mm-hmm.
But by EPA per play, they're like one of the top 4 or 5 offenses ever through 4 weeks.
That seems.
Whereas by DVOA, they're second behind Baltimore.
That sounds more reasonable. Because
the reason why is because they have fewer yards per. They have a slightly higher success rate than the Ravens, but they only have 6.3 yards per play, whereas the Ravens have 7.0.
And they're not necessarily crushing it in the red zone week in and week out. I think overreacted a little bit to what we saw in the Bengals the other night, but it's strong. It's a very strong offense right now.
So I went back and looked. I think there's a really interesting question here. Right, I said before the season when I did a lot of preview stuff, it's very likely that one of the rookie quarterbacks will be good, and I will be very wrong about one of the teams with rookie quarterbacks, including Indianapolis.
Okay.
And clearly, it's Washington.
Yes.
And clearly, it's Jayden Daniels, right?
Yeah.
So can he keep this up? So I went back and looked. Now, it's easier for me to look at team stats than player stats if I'm looking at just a few weeks. So I went and looked at quarterbacks in their first 4 starts as rookies. Okay. Jayden Daniels has led his team to an offensive DVOA of about 23%. Right. That is the second best for any rookie in his first 4 starts. The best is Brock Purdy.
Okay. Wow.
The other thing is that there are teams, quarterbacks that had better passing stats than Daniels. Their offenses were better passing, including Marino and Roethlisberger and Prescott.
Okay.
But in overall offensive DVOA, this is like pretty much the best a rookie has ever done in the first 4, especially in the first 4 games of the season. Obviously, Purdy didn't start till week 14.
Right.
If you look at the list of guys who were really good in their first 4 starts like this, there's only one guy that makes you go, huh, okay, maybe it's not guaranteed that this will stick.
RG3?
Which is Colt McCoy.
Oh.
No, RG3 is different because RG3 was good his whole rookie year, and then he got injured. And RG3 is a different story.
Right.
Colt McCoy was pretty darn good in his first 4 starts and then really faded at the end of the season. But obviously, Colt McCoy's resume is very different than Jayden Daniels, especially because if you think of what Colt McCoy's strengths are, it screams dude who will do well in his first couple starts and then fade when you get him.
Absolutely.
Right? Like Daniels doesn't the only thing about Daniels that screams that is that Cliff Kingsbury is his offensive coordinator.
Right.
So the rest of this list, Purdy, Prescott, RG3, who was good his whole rookie year.
Right.
Ben Roethlisberger, Deshaun Watson, Cam Newton because of the rushing, Herbert, Marino, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, CJ Stroud. Like these are guys who kept it up their whole rookie year. I feel like it is very likely that Jayden Daniels will keep it up, not at this level necessarily.
Right.
But Jayden Daniels is very likely going to end the year as a top 10 quarterback.
I feel comfortable with that. Again, rushing is part of his portfolio, so you have to take that into account. When Colt McCoy is your one counterexample, and again, he had injuries too. He had significant injuries. I think that was
he missed 3 games, and then he came back, and he was really bad in the last 2 games.
It was a severe concussion, and I think they dragged him back onto the field. If I'm remembering this correctly, correct me if I'm wrong. But also, he didn't have the resume coming in. He did not have the physical traits, et cetera, et cetera. So, no, and credit to Daniels. Credit to Kingsbury, obviously. Credit to everything they're doing there. Credit to Alamade Zacchaeus, who is now suddenly looks good.
Yeah. The only guy I would not give as much credit to is Dan Quinn.
Right.
Because Dan Quinn has come in and their defense sucks.
It was a weird game. I mean, obviously, they blew out the Cardinals, but it was like closer in the first half. There was like this little snowball of dumb mistakes, a 4th and 1 failure by the Cardinals, then like a 45-yard pass interference penalty, and that blew it up a little bit. But you're right. I don't think the Commanders' defense was looking that great. Their offense is that. And, yeah, even when you mention guys like Wentz, who fall off later, you're talking about after a couple of years of some pretty impressive.
Right.
Yeah.
So Hitchhiker's Pie says, are we on a watch for Dak Prescott's rookie quarterback DYAR record? Yes, because Jayden Daniels leads the league in DYAR right now.
Wow.
Yeah. No, sorry, he's second behind Purdy. He leads the league in DVOA.
Purdy erasure, folks. Purdy erasure 49ers.
Purdy has like 14 more attempts. So Purdy is slightly beyond him in DYAR. He is absolutely on pace to shatter the record for rookie. Shatter.
Nice.
Yeah, especially if you include the rushing value. It's pretty.
Prescott only played 13 games his rookie year, 14 games.
I think he missed a couple because of injuries.
Or wasn't Romo the starter at the beginning?
No, Romo was injured in preseason.
Okay. I'm misremembering everything.
And Hitchhiker's Pile points out the last rookie quarterback MVP was Sammy Baugh. All right, that's a little too far to be talking about him as MVP at this point.
Right.
All right, let's talk about, we usually like to go through reverse post-game win expectancy games, and we had one this week, and it gives us a chance to talk about the NFC South. The Saints had a 74% post-game win expectancy against the Falcons and lost by 1 point on a very long field goal at the end of the game. Very bad for my whole Saints to win the division thing. It was a bad day for that, between the Saints losing by 1 point and Tampa Bay whipping the Eagles. The Falcons actually had a higher DVOA slightly, but the Saints ran 19 more plays. And normally if you basically have the same efficiency and run more plays, you win.
Right.
Except they had the muffed punt.
Yes.
And they had which led directly to a touchdown. Like the Falcons didn't even have to run any offensive plays.
Right.
And an 88-yard pick six.
Yes. Which
pick sixes are often like based on where the offensive players happen to be standing at the time the interception is thrown. Right. It's not really a good judge of the offense, how good they reach a return man and tackle him. So the Saints look really pretty good after that game still, I think, even though they haven't been as good as they were in the first 2 weeks. The Falcons look all right. The Bucs look really good.
Oh, you're telling me that the post-game win expectancy wasn't backwards for the Bucs Eagles, that the Eagles didn't play really well and somehow lose in that one? Are you telling me that?
No.
I was there. I saw it. Yeah, so you had the muff punt, you had the interception return, you had a pass interference penalty, which is pretty much sets up that long field goal. The Falcons' big drive at the end was
yes. Although I will say, I think Paulson at Debo had to do it. He was beat by Mooney. Mooney was going to probably catch that ball, and between the yards after the catch, he was going to end up making it like a 30-yard field goal.
Right. I mean,
I think that Debo he basically mauled Mooney, and I think he kind of had to.
If only he had made it look a little slicker. If there was some way he could have made it look a little slicker. Because it was like, yes, I'm going to.
And honestly, it's better to do something stupid than to be beat, because I feel like stupid things can be fixed down the line, but being beat is not good. But he was beat.
He was beat, exactly. There was also a drive earlier where the Saints moved the ball down, and it was like 4th and 5, and they attempted to go for it instead of kicking the field goal. Whether or not that was the right call or not, they did go back and punch it in afterwards. But there were a lot of just not quite, they were executing down the field and not quite converting it into points, and I think that contributed to their post-game win expectancy.
All right, let's go through the DVOA top 11. Okay. Because 10 and 11 are very close to each other.
All right.
Number 11, the Houston Texans.
Flag, false start. Laramie Tunsil, 73, offense.
Number 10, the Green Bay Packers. And this is the first week that opponent adjustments are included, by the way.
Okay, but they're very small, right?
They're 40% strength.
Okay.
Number 9, Kansas City, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, about losing Rashee Rice, especially when Hollywood Brown is very likely not coming back this season.
Right.
And Isaiah Pacheco was out for a few weeks. They're really getting cut down there on the receivers. Right. There's a lot of talk about them trading for a receiver.
They would be, get on the phone right now. Amari Cooper, get on the phone right now. Devontae Adams is not going to the Chiefs from the Raiders.
I can't imagine. I cannot imagine Mark Davis letting his front office do that.
Al Davis would rise from the grave, shooting lightning bolts out of his ears if that happened. but yeah, make some phone calls. You need somebody.
Number 8, the Detroit Lions.
Pending tonight.
Number 7, the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Sure. Defense, awesome. They probably look good post-game win expectancy because of what they did in the fourth quarter.
Running backs lousy. Fields surprisingly average.
Yeah, that's about
good, better than I would have ever expected. Good for him so far.
Right.
Number 6, the San Francisco 49ers.
They just took out their frustrations yesterday.
A little bit of a opponent adjustment hit for them.
Yeah.
Number 5, Buffalo.
Wow. One beating in 4 tries. That'll do it.
Big beating. And then there's a big gap before we get to the Final 4.
Oh, God. I haven't heard the Seahawks yet. Oh, my God. Here we go.
You're not going to like this, but it has an asterisk. Number 4, New Orleans. Still, based on those first 2 games.
Right.
Because the last 2 games have been okay, but the first 2 games were awesome.
Were amazing. And they could be 3-1 if not for some weirdness with yesterday. Yeah. A couple fluky plays.
Number 3, the Baltimore Ravens.
The Seahawks are ahead of the Ravens.
Number 2, the Minnesota Vikings.
No, I'm leaving. I'm out of the podcast. All right, I'm coming back.
And number 1 with a big fat asterisk, because they've only played 3 games, is Seattle. Seattle will not be number 1 unless they kick Detroit's ass tonight.
Opponent adjustments didn't them out of the.
It knocked them down, but not all the.
It knocked them down from 2-1. Just not knocking them down.
Well, because they've only played 3 games. Again, tonight, if they don't whip up on the Lions, they will fall to 4th.
I'm fine.
Even if they have a normal win over the Lions, they will fall to 4th.
Okay.
Because unless they have a big win over the Lions.
Okay, and that seems unlikely.
And if they have a big win over the Lions,
it demonstrates
that it's not ridiculous that they should be number 1 or number 2 right now.
Fair enough. Let's wait until tomorrow morning.
So let's preview Monday Night Football, starting with the second game, because the second game is the better of the 2 by far.
Yes.
Which is Seahawks at the Lions, with 2 teams that are currently in the top 10. The These are the top 2 defenses so far this year on third downs, although obviously they've only played 3 games each.
Right.
The Seahawks so far, here's interesting, they're first against passes to the left and right, but 20th against passes up the middle.
They've played Bo Nix, Jacoby Brissett, Skylar Thompson, and Tim Boyle.
Yeah. Goff, who have actually passed up the middle reasonably well against them.
Okay.
And Goff last year he's struggled over the middle this year, but last year he was 3rd in the league up the middle. So, hey, I'm on Ross St. Brown. Hi, how you doing?
Right.
Sam Laporta, what's going on, man?
Is Laporta healthy?
I think
Laporta
he's
was full participant in practice, so he's going to be fine. Yeah, and Goff had a couple big mistakes over the middle. I think that's what's impacting it. Like there are a couple big turnovers.
Interceptions, yeah.
Yeah, in the middle. He's usually very efficient there.
I mean, the line is Lions -4.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the system likes the Seahawks. Okay. I feel like this is the night that the Seahawks get brought back to earth and the Lions win by
100%. One little worry, Frank Ragnow is out at center.
Yes, that is a worry.
But a lot of injuries.
But a lot of Seattle's defensive line is out. Like, I think perhaps their entire starting defensive line is out.
Boye Mafe out. Byron Murphy, who's a great rookie, out. Leo Williams, who's a great starter, out. Uchenna Nwosu, I probably butchered that, out. That's a big
chunk. That's it. That's the whole line.
That's a big chunk of the front 7, yes.
That's the whole starting line right there. So
and
I think that the Lions show that they're the team we all thought they were in the preseason, and the Seahawks show that they're the team we all thought they were in the preseason, and the Lions win by 7 or 10 or 14, and all is right in the universe.
I'm with you. Please.
Then how much do you want to watch the Titans at the Dolphins?
Oh, come on. How much do you want to watch the Will Levis meme generation experience?
The Titans are, well, so here's the thing. Will Levis is so far, again, only 3 games, 8th in value on deep passes, 28th on short passes.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like Will Levis, doesn't it?
Yeah. And what about passes that go to the other team? Or
Miami's defense is 32nd against deep passes, but 9th against short passes. So the strategy for this game, I would think, is huck it up there, Will, and see what happens.
Just float it downfield. Nuke still out jumps everybody. It'll probably be Nuke on Ramsey on Nuke. Ridley has made some impossible catches, and I think that is it. Just float it, and hope that those guys have time to get downfield because the offensive line is not very good, and when Levis is rushed and has to think or decides he wants to play hero, that's when hilarity ensues.
I will also point out these are we said that the Seahawks and Lions are the 2 best defenses on third down so far this year. Okay. These are the 2 worst offenses so far on third downs. Are we having fun yet?
And again, because third down is like the witching hour for Levis.
The Dolphins have been really bad this year. Like, okay, so Tua was bad against the Bills, and then Tua got hurt. Yes. And then it's been Skylar Thompson, and he's been really bad. And their defense has been really bad. They're 29th. So, it's bad. It's going to be bad.
It's bad. It's going to be a bad game.
Tyler Huntley, I know, but still bad.
Snoop Huntley in the first start, against Will Levis, I'm taking that.
So you're taking it's Dolphins -2.5.
Oh, my God. I have to lay points with Snoop Huntley. What horrible world is this? I'm doing it.
I like the over 37.
Oh, I like that. A chaos over.
Because these defenses suck. It's not just that the quarterbacks suck. It's that everything is bad. So 37 is kind of a low total for an everything is bad game where it's not like there's a weather problem.
Okay. Dolphins money line in the over at +225.
All right.
I'm doing it. I'm going to do it on my phone after we log off.
Camden Caps wants to know if there's an advanced metric for meme generation. I don't know. We have to figure out some sort of acronym that spells Levis.
Perfect. And I have to something that combines backward fumbles, interceptions. There has to be some combination of ridiculous things. Intentional ground.
I will say people were saying last night that Bills play was the worst play they've ever seen. And I just responded with a picture of the Colts fake punt against the Patriots.
Oh my God, yes.
That was the worst play.
Oh
That was
my
the worst play ever. That was the worst play ever.
Is that McAfee?
Was the punter, I think? Yeah.
Anthony Costanzo was involved in some way.
I don't remember exactly, but yeah, that was the worst play ever right there.
Okay.
But it was pretty bad. That call, I don't quite understand what it was supposed to start with Samuel having the ball and then get it to out. Like, who was supposed to be fooled that they weren't going to cover receivers downfield? I don't know what was.
Right. It looks like that play, you look at it, it's like, well, you should just run Samuel off tackle or put Allen in motion, and that might draw and run the other way, something like that. Not, we're just going to get the ball to Josh Allen, but in a slightly more convoluted way. Don't get it.
Yeah. Hitchhiker's Pie says Jacoby Myers is lateral to Chandler Jones. See, that's an interesting question, because does worst play mean the play was bad or that the play design was bad?
Correct. Good point.
See, that one, the play design on the Jacoby Myers lateral to Chandler Jones wasn't bad. It was, it was the end of the game lateral to each other play.
Right.
It was not as bad as the design last night.
Right. It's like saying, what was it? Gary Yepremian going like this and the ball behind him. It's like,
right.
That wasn't like a bad play call. It was the field goal got botched, or the butt fumble. That wasn't a bad play call. The fumble got botched. Yeah, we're talking about like, what were you thinking when you drew this up and said, this is what we're running right now?
All right, that does it for today's show. I hope everybody enjoys Monday Night Football tonight, or at least half of it. And once again, we will not be here Thursday. I'm taking Thursday off for the Jewish holiday. So no Week 5 preview. Sorry about that, guys. You'll have to go elsewhere for your Jets-Vikings preview, and we will return next Monday with a review of Week 5 in the NFL. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for watching. Please make sure to read all the DVOA stuff, read miketanier.substack.com, and like and subscribe to the show, and tell your friends, and we will be back next Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern. So long, everybody.